The wind over Alwyn Gate felt sharper the morning after the Basin trial. It cut through pine needles and broken stone, as if the world had been honed by conflict. Kael woke before dawn, not from fear, but from the feeling of pressure building somewhere beyond sight. The oak above Mira Grave shimmered faintly, then settled again as if it too was listening. Oren stood at the edge of the courtyard when Kael stepped outside. The old sage did not greet him with comfort, only observation. "The Basin has rejected corruption," Oren said, "but rejection creates ripples. Ripples draw attention from powers that have remained quiet for a long time." Brom joined them, carrying a folded strip of parchment marked with hurried lines. Scouts reported lightning without storms in the eastern ridge country. The bolts struck the same area repeatedly, as if someone tested the sky like a blade. Litheriel said nothing, but her expression tightened with recognition. That pattern was not natural. It was not the random anger of clouds. It was precision. Kael gathered a small group and departed before the sun fully rose. Brom insisted on coming, and Litheriel moved ahead as silent point. Oren remained behind, claiming the gate needed a steady route while Kael chased thunder. Kael did not argue, but he felt the weight of leaving others behind again. The journeys carried them into higher ground where trees grew thinner and rock rose through soil like exposed bone. The air smelled of wet stone, though the sky remained clear. Kael felt a faint vibration in the ley current beneath each step, a restless hum like distant strings pulled too tight. The forest grew quieter as they climbed. "This is deliberate work," he muttered. "Someone is carving messages into the world. You are the one twisting roots and calling yourself balance," she said. Her voice carried through wind without strain. "I expected a monster, not a boy wearing grief like armor." Kael did not flinch, though the insult struck close to truth. "I do not call myself balance," he replied. "I try to keep it alive." The woman stepped down from the ledge without climbing. Wind caught her and lowered her like a hand. The air around her crackled, and the hairs on Kael's neck rose. "Stormbound art," Litheriel whispered, voice tight with old memory. Brom shifted his stance and lifted his hammer. Kael raised a hand to slow him, but he did not lower his guard. The woman watched the gesture and smiled faintly as if amused by restraint. "I am Soraya," she said, "and the sky listens to me. I have been tracking corruption surges along the ley lines, and your name is tangled in every report. Wherever you go, the world trembles." Kael stepped forward carefully, boots grinding against loose stone. "The world trembles because Gorath tries to break it," he said. "I am trying to prevent that." Soraya tilted her head slightly, as though tasting his words. "Prevention is weakness, disguised as virtue," she said. "The only language tyrants respect is decisive force." Soraya's expression hardened. She lifted her hand, and a thread of lightning snapped between her fingers and the air. "You speak like someone afraid to win," she said. The strike came faster than thought. Bram surged forward with a roar, hammer raised, but Soraya turned toward him, and the wind hit him like a wall. It shoved him back hard enough to scrape stone, pinning him with pressure rather than force. Litheriel fired an arrow, but the arrow veered mid-flight, pulled aside by a sudden gust that bent its path cleanly away. Soraya focused on Kael again. "You protect," she said, "but you do not strike. Protection is delay. Delay is surrender." Kael exhaled slowly. feeling the ravine current beneath his feet. If the sky listened to her, then the earth would listen to him. He planted his palm against the rock and called up roots that were not present, coaxing thin tendrils from cracks where ancient seeds had slipped. They rose like threads and wrapped around his wrist, grounding him. Soraya raised both hands and the air crackled violently. Lightning formed above them without clouds, a spear of light held ready. The ravine brightened with a cold glare. Kael did not meet lightning with more lightning. He drew dampness from the rock, pulling hidden moisture into a thick vapor that rose between them. The vapor caught the electrical charge and dispersed it in a wide shimmer rather than a focused strike. Soraya's eyes narrowed at the unexpected redirect. She moved fast, closing distance with the wind at her back. Kael sidestepped and raised a living shield, but she snapped her hand and the shield tore apart as if shredded by invisible blades. Her power was not only lightning, it was pressure, wind, velocity, and sudden shift. Kael retreated to steps, then stopped retreating. He felt the ley vibration building, unstable understorm magic. If she kept striking, she could fracture the ravine current without meaning to. That fracture could become a beacon for Gorath. "Stop," Kael said, voice sharp now. "You are shaking the current beneath us." Soraya laughed, once, brief and bitter. "Good," she replied. "Let it shake. Let it reveal its weakness." Kael's anger flashed, but he shaped it into action. He drove both hands into the stone and summoned a web of roots beneath the surface, binding cracks together and stabilizing the vibration. Green silver light pulsed through the web like calm breath. The ravine tremor eased. Soraya hesitated for the first time. Her eyes flicked down, sensing the shift. She had not expected him to heal while under attack. In that hesitation, a new sound entered the ravine. It was a low, metallic groan, echoing from beyond the ravine mouth. Brahm's head turned, and Lethriel's posture sharpened. Orc horns, not far. Soraya's attention snapped outward. Kael felt the same truth immediately. Gorath's guts had been tracking the storm strikes, using them like guiding fire. They came fast, a small unit at first, then more shapes behind them moving with practiced silence. They were not charging wildly. They were hunting with discipline. Their armor carried faint, dark etching along edges, a sign of corrupted reinforcement. Soraya looked at Kael again, and the rivalry in her gaze was replaced by calculation. "You drew them," she said sharply. "Your presence is bait." Kael did not deny it. "Your lightning made the bait visible," he replied. "If we continue this, we give them exactly what they want." For a brief moment, Soraya seemed ready to strike him anyway. Then another horn sounded, closer. The ravine air thickened with approaching violence. Soraya lowered her hands a fraction. "I do not ally with strangers," she said, "but I do not give tyrants free advantage." Kael nodded once. "Then we fight side by side," he said, "until the threat is gone." The first orc rushed into the ravine with a hooked blade. Kael snapped his hand outward, and roots surged from cracks, catching the orc ankle and yanking it down. Soraya followed instantly, lightning striking the fallen body with clean finality. More poured in. Brom broke free of wind pressure as Soraya shifted focus, then crashed into the front line with hammer swings that echoed like thunder. Lethriel's arrows struck eyes and throats, each shot precise. Kael stabilized ground beneath them, preventing fractures under repeated impact. The orcs adapted quickly, spreading to flank. One carried a small black stone that pulsed faintly, and Kael felt corruption in it immediately. It was a locator, tied to ley vibration and storm discharge. Gorath was learning to track magic like scent. Saga saw it, and her expression darkened. She hurled a concentrated wind strike that slammed the carrier into the wall. The stone flew free, rolling toward Kael. Kael caught it with a root tendril before it could touch soil. The tendril blackened at once, corruption biting into living fiber. He severed it immediately and contained the stone within a hardened shell of bark. Saga stared at him with new intensity. "You understand containment," she said. "Most do not." Kael did not have time for pride. "Gorath learns," he replied. "Every encounter teaches him." The last orc fell with a wet thud against stones. Silence returned in fragments, broken by labored breath and distant wind. Kael felt the ravine current trembling, not fractured, but strained. Saga stepped toward him, eyes hard again now that immediate threat was gone. "Do not mistake necessity for trust," she said. "I still believe your balance will fail." Kael met her gaze steadily. "And I still believe your force will break what you claim to protect," he replied. "But we just proved we can prevent each other from making the worst mistake." Kael approached more slowly, keeping distance respectful. "Then help me stop him," he said. "Not for me. For the land that listens to both of us." Saga did not answer at first. Wind moved around her shoulders like an unseen cloak. Her eyes softened by a fraction before hardening again. "I will not kneel to your cause," she said, "but I will watch your war, and I will judge whether you deserve the power you claim to carry." Kael nodded. "That is enough for now," he said. "Trust grows slowly." Saga glanced at him sideways. "You speak like someone who has been abandoned often," she said. Kael felt the pendant beneath his shirt, warm against his skin. He did not deny that either. He looked past her toward the open land beyond the ravine. In the distance, clouds began to gather for the first time that day. They were natural clouds, slow and heavy, not summoned. For a moment, Kael felt the sky itself acknowledging the meeting. Saga noticed the clouds too. Her expression shifted into something quieter, almost reverent. "The sky listens to truth," she murmured, "and it hates lies." Kael did not know if she meant Gorath or herself. He only knew this encounter had changed the shape of the war. A rival had appeared, not as enemy alone, but as mirror. They left the ravine together as dusk approached, moving toward higher ground where they could see wider territory. Brom grunted that he disliked lightning people, but he did not argue with the advantage. Letheriel remained wary, eyes never leaving Saga's hands. When night fell, they made camp beneath a cluster of wind-twisted pines. Kael sat apart for a while, listening to the current beneath the soil. It had steadied again. Saga approached without warning and sat across the fire from him. She watched the flames, as though reading them. "You carry grief like a blade," she said quietly, "and you pretend it does not cut you." Kael swallowed and kept his voice steady. "Grief teaches caution," he replied. "Caution is not cowardice." Saga's gaze lifted to him. "Caution can become chains," she said. "Chains can look like virtue until the moment you need to move." Kael felt heat rise in his chest, not anger this time, but something more complicated. He looked at her hands, still faintly glowing with a residual charge. Power like hers was thrilling and dangerous, like standing too close to a storm front. "You are not wrong," Kael admitted. "But neither am I." Sarai leaned back slightly, studying him with new attention. That honesty surprised her. She did not smile, but her expression softened in a way that felt like dawn light through clouds. "Prom," cleared his throat loudly, as if offended by the quiet tension growing. Letheriel pretended not to notice, but her eyes narrowed with protective suspicion. The fire cracked and sent sparks upward into dark. Above them, clouds gathered thicker. Distant thunder rolled, low and slow, like a promise. Kael realized that this chapter had ended not with resolution, but with a beginning. Somewhere far east, Gorath would receive word that storm magic had met forest magic, and neither had shattered. He would understand that Kael was no longer alone in his strange balance. He would plan accordingly. Kael lay down that night and did not sleep easily. The wind moved around the pines, and lightning flickered far away behind cloud. He thought of Myra, of sacrifice, of the oak, and of the woman whose power tasted like Squia. In the darkness, the pendant against his chest warmed. He did not know if it was memory or warning. He only knew the Saga had gained a new thread, and threads, once woven, were not easily cut. The storm did not pass during the night. It gathered instead, rolling across the ridge, like a living thing searching for ground. Thunder echoed between stone faces, and returned distorted, as though the mountains themselves were speaking back. Kael felt the ley current tighten beneath the earth again. Soraya stood at the edge of camp before dawn, facing the thickening clouds. Lightning flickered inside them, without striking, restrained but restless. She lifted her hand slowly, and the clouds responded with subtle movement. The sky did not obey her, but it acknowledged her. Pale approached without sound and stopped a few paces behind her. "You are not causing this," he said quietly. "It is being drawn." Soraya did not turn. "The current is rising too quickly for weather alone," she replied. "Something is pulling storm energy downward and holding it in place." Brom joined them, jaw tight as he looked at the sky. "That is not natural thunder," he muttered. "It is being fed." Kael felt it then. A pressure beneath both soil and air, as if the currents were being forced together somewhere beyond sight. Gorath was experimenting again. When they reached the top, the structure revealed itself. Soraya's expression hardened. "They are forcing sky into stone," she said. "If the charge builds high enough, it will rupture the plateau." "This is not meant to control," Kael said slowly. "It is meant to overload." Thunder cracked directly overhead as if answering him. The obelisk flared brighter, and a bolt of lightning struck it with explosive force. The charge did not dissipate outward. It sank downward into the trench, amplifying the hum beneath. Soraya clenched her jaw. "They are using storm energy as ignition," she said. "When the threshold breaks, it will tear open the current." Kael understood instantly what that meant. A fracture here would not merely damage the ridge. It would send a shock through surrounding ley paths, destabilizing entire regions. Brum circled the outer trench, examining the metal rods. "I can break these anchors," he said, "but not if lightning keeps feeding them." Soraya stepped forward toward the obelisk without hesitation. "Then I cut the sky," she said. Kael moved beside her, "and I will steady the ground." Their eyes met, not in rivalry this time, but in recognition. This required coordination beyond instinct. Soraya lifted both arms, and wind exploded outward from her in a spiraling surge. Clouds overhead twisted violently, as she pulled the forming lightning sideways, redirecting its arc away from the obelisk. Thunder responded with angry vibration. Kael dropped to one knee and drove both hands into the rock at the trench edge. Roots surged from hidden cracks, not visible but real, threading beneath stone and around the metal anchors. He wove a stabilizing lattice that braced the plateau from below. Lightning struck again, but Soraya caught it mid-descent and hurled it into open sky. The effort carved strain into her expression, and her breath shortened. Stormbound art was powerful, but it was not endless. The obelisk reacted violently to the interruption. Its sigils flared bright red and pulsed downward in heavy waves. The plateau shuddered as if something beneath tried to push upward. "They are accelerating the release," Litheriel warned sharply. Kael did not rise from his stabilizing position. If he abandoned the lattice, the plateau could fracture instantly. He trusted the others to hold the line. More bolts gathered overhead, angry at being denied. Kael shifted his weaving pattern, extending roots toward the obelisk's base. He did not attack the structure. He wrapped around it, absorbing vibration into his lattice. One corrupted soldier broke through Brahm and lunged toward Kael's kneeling form. Lethriel's arrow pierced its throat mid-step, and it collapsed inches from his shoulder. Soraya's breath came harsher now. "I cannot hold the sky forever," she said through clenched teeth. "You do not need to," Kael answered. "Just long enough." The obelisk flickered violently as the redirected charge began slipping out of its intended path. Soraya felt the shift instantly. She adjusted her stance and released one final concentrated bolt directly into the obelisk's upper sigil. The strike shattered its topmost rune. The structure cracked. Brahm crushed the last standing opponent with a decisive blow. Silence followed, broken only by fading thunder. Soraya dropped to one knee, breathing hard. The storm overhead began dispersing slowly, now that its tether was broken. Clouds thinned and drifted apart. Kael rose unsteadily, feeling the plateau settle beneath his feet. The ley current was bruised, but intact. The fracture had been prevented. Soraya looked at him with something new in her gaze. "You did not try to overpower the structure," she said quietly. "You redirected it." "Force meets force until both break," Kael replied. "Redirection preserves what should remain." She stood slowly, stepping closer than before. "You think like the earth," she said. "It bends but does not shatter easily." Kael met her eyes without looking away. "And you think like the sky," he replied. "Swift, decisive, unwilling to stagnate." A faint smile touched her mouth, brief but genuine. Kael felt the weight of that statement settle deeper than battle. Trust was not formed in quiet peace. It was forged under shared strain. "I do not ask you to kneel to my cause," he said softly. "I ask you to walk beside it." Soraya studied him for a long moment as clouds parted above. Sunlight cut through in thin beams, striking shattered obelisk fragments and illuminating drifting dust. "Very well," she said finally. "I will walk beside you, not as follower, as equal." Kael inclined his head in acceptance. As equal, forest and storm had collided and chosen not to destroy one another.